Youth is unknowing. When two beings come together to give what cannot be taken back, they still find joy. Where's the fun in such actions? What is so special about opposites getting together? Even if love is not involved, they can be happy with such a questionable occurrence. That's a poem that I wrote when I was rather young. I think I must have been in middle school or early high school. And I think it sucks. If I were to rewrite it today, I would expand a little more, be more obvious that I was talking about sex, and explore more why I found sex to be confusing and how I didn't really get the appeal of it. But even though I dislike it, I don't necessarily cringe or dislike the person who wrote it. She and I are very different people, but I still relate to her. Not just insofar as I was her, but her confusion on sex and other forms of intimacy, they're still genuine. Something that has always concerned me ever since I was young is forgetting who I was. Or more specifically, forgetting what it was like to be young. And a lot of that idea comes from the movie Hook. I loved it as a kid. I rewatched it a million times, partially because my dad's minivan had a little TV with a videotape player, and it was one of the few movies that we liked that we had on VHS. Also partially because I love Peter Pan. I have ever since I was a kid, and even to the point of leaving my window open one night with a sign on the window saying Peter Pan is welcomed here. But Hook is still one of my favorite movies to this day, also because it taught me how to frame the idea of growing up in my mind and how to basically become an adult. Even to this day, when people think of growing up or leaving childhood, they see it as, for lack of a better way of putting it, becoming boring. You stop playing with toys, you stop having imagination, dreams, and in the way that people perform being an adult, you basically stop empathizing with those younger than you, as though this part of you that used to be a kid, a teenager, is now shut off. And if ever you were to reflect on those years, it's with some sort of disgust, distaste. How could I have ever thought these things? And that's who the character of Peter Banning was at the beginning of the film. Because he forgot what it was like to be young, he didn't put any importance on being there for his kids, letting them be kids sometimes when it was called for. Instead, he was more concerned with his job and on the outside providing for his family, but not in the way that is important when you're 10 or 8. Or however old his kids were. He viewed storytelling that Wendy was doing for his kids as something needless. Like, he literally couldn't see the point in filling someone's head with imagination or creativity. I think the most poignant moment in the entire film for me that comments on this version of adulthood is Wendy saying that Peter's become a pirate. And that's how it's framed in my mind too. This idea of putting away your toys and becoming more practical, that's what being a pirate is to me. This is what I've always feared becoming, and it was haunting to see this start to develop in my closest friend in high school. All throughout high school, one of his biggest complaints about his mom was her telling him to do things just because she said so, as if she didn't need to reason with him or explain why what she wanted him to do was right, because he's a kid. It doesn't matter because I'm the parent.
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
And then later in our senior year, when we were discussing our parenting styles, he stated that he would do the same to his kids because he's the parent. They just have to listen to him. Completely forgetting or not caring to remember or possibly even putting weight on why he felt that way previously. Again, it was framed in my mind as becoming a pirate, letting yourself lose the parts of you that empathize with youth. It's one of the reasons why I do actually cringe when people say kids these days.
Why can't they be like we were, perfect in every way? What's the matter with kids today?
As though they've never gone through anything remotely similar. Or if they did, it doesn't matter now because they're grown up. they're not feeling that way. They have new concerns, so what happened then shouldn't have mattered because now you have something else to worry about. And this is something that I fear exists in the Degrassi fandom too. People criticizing the characters on the show for caring about things like popularity or having angst about having no control over the world around you, as though they forgot what it was to be that age. When you don't have other concerns or worries or responsibilities, and the only thing in front of you is high school or the relationship with your parents, then how could you not put so much weight in those things? There's a Family Guy clip that makes its rounds through the internet, basically mocking, I think the show was Seven Heaven or One Tree Hill, one of those, for this exact thing.
I've got so many problems.
Hey, nothing that can't be fixed by staring at a lake.
High school is such a serious thing. These problems matter.
And again, for me, that's rather disturbing. But I think one of the greatest things about Hook and its exploration of this version of growing up is its answer to it. Now, Hook doesn't want you to go back to being a child necessarily. Hell, when Peter tried that, he became kind of intolerable. He lost sight of the reason why he came to Neverland and was unable to empathize with Tink and recognize what she was going through in that moment. No, instead, what Hook wants us to do when we grow up is to become mature. What Peter was doing in the beginning of the film wasn't maturity. The film wants us to remember childhood, remember what it was like to have an imagination, and remember our dreams, not as something to be cringed at, while also taking on the actual good traits of growing up. Empathy, being able to put other people's needs over your own, and also recognizing when you need to stop goofing off and be serious. But then also knowing that you can go back to playing when the job is done. It's a medium between the two extremes that is what people should be aiming for. It's redefining the idea of growing up. I know Steven Spielberg does not look back on Hook very fondly, but frankly, I can't imagine my life without Hook. It solidified in my mind what I should fear becoming and allowed me to be conscious of it. If I start feeling like I'm getting away from connecting with young people, that should be cause for alarm. Because the moment that I stop recognizing a young person's problems as being real is the moment when I become a pirate. And as Captain Hook demonstrates, the world of a pirate is cold, lonely, and rather depressing. So I guess the moral of the story is don't necessarily be a lost boy, but don't necessarily be a pirate. The end of movie Peter Pan. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and if you'd like to talk to me about Degrassi, Steven Universe, Peter Pan, musicals, just about anything, you can find me on Twitter. I'll have my username somewhere around here, but I'm at NotAvampyre, and also feel free to send me some fan art. I would love to see what you draw. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and until next time.